right. That's just not right. You can't put 300 horsepower through the front wheels of a car and do that. Wow! Pretty, isn't it? Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped. Come on you two, say hello to your massed audience. Welcome to Petrol Ped and welcome to the Renault Megane RS 300 trophy. Now, I've driven a hot Megane before a couple of years ago and it kind of surprised me from left field. I didn't realise it was going to be that good. So when I managed to persuade Renault UK to give me this for a week, I kind of knew what I was going to be getting myself in for. But I really wanted to drive this car because, interestingly, this car has 300 horsepower through the front wheels. And I kind of wanted to see just whether that was possible, bearing in mind my Mini GP3 that's coming next year is going to have 306 horsepower through the front wheels. I wanted to kind of have a look. So let's have a bit of a wander around and talk about the car from the outside. And then we'll obviously do the important bit and take it for a spin. Outside wise, first things first is this car is in the most beautiful colour. It's called liquid yellow. It's a pretty expensive £1,300 option, but it just makes the car sing in my view, and it's got a really interesting range of shades and colours when you look at it in different types of light. So I think if I was going to have one of these, I would pay the extra money straight away to get the liquid yellow colour. Front of the car, I think it looks really nice. What I really like is touches like the kind of Renault Sport inspired fog lamp design. Just a very subtle RS badge there. I think this is probably a little bit big for me, but I'll let them off that. But yeah, really lovely. And as the sun comes out today, you can kind of see the colour popping off of the paintwork. The back's pretty special too. This sun's really helpful to help you kind of see the paint colour, but it's a nightmare for filming. But yeah, I think the back end of this Megane is, I think it just strikes that really nice balance between sort of clean, it's not too boy racery, it's a little lip spoiler there, but it's got big wide flanks, and then the kind of centerpiece, I guess, is this center exhaust. So we'll talk more about this when we get out on the road. It's got a switchable valve, so you can have it in a quieter mode or you stick it in race mode, and it just, the amazing thing about that is it actually starts to pop and crackle pretty much instantly from startup. And it does sound really nice, but not overtly nice. It rumbles at tick over, it's got a really nice tone on throttle, and then when you lift off throttle, you get these kind of pops and crackles, but not too much. I guess from a styling point of view, the thing I liked about the previous version of this that I drove is it had the Akrapovic system with a carbon detailing around the outside. I think that just looked a little bit nicer. This could just stylistically, I think, look nice. I quite like the diffuser section. And then the boot in this car is huge. It's a really big old boot. It's got a kind of droppable rear seats. It's a hatch at the end of the day, so it is super practical. And I just think that makes this car a really interesting proposition. The other thing is the side profile. I think that's pretty special too, because of these babies. It's a pretty car from the side. On the front wing, I particularly like this detailing here with the kind of vent, I guess, just to let the high pressure build up out of the front wing. These wheels though, they are a real centerpiece to the car. I must admit to have been quite nervous this week, making sure I didn't curb them. They are certainly, because they're diamond cut, they are asking to be curbed, and they would be very expensive to fix, I am sure. But I just think they look fantastic. Brembo brakes with their really good stopping power up front. I've been very impressed with those. But let's jump inside and have a look at the cabin, because there's some good things and some things I'm not so keen on. Now, you can't get in this car without, first of all, noticing these seats. These Sports Recaro seats, now let's get it out there, they are a £1,500 option. But firstly, I think they look fantastic. But what impressed me the most about these seats, I've done over 600 miles in this car. I did 300 miles in a day, and they are supremely comfortable. They're very supportive, but I did look at them and think, I think these are going to give me a numb bump. They didn't. They were really good. I'm not so sure the longevity of these side bolsters. I don't know. You kind of see I get in them quite carefully to make sure I don't kind of rub the main one by the door. Apart from that, lovely steering wheel and driving position. There's plenty of adjustment, but the other star of the show in this car is that it has the most fantastic 6-speed manual box. We will talk more about that when we get out on the road. And it's also great to have a car with, this is called a handbrake, by the way, for my younger viewers that always get into cars with a kind of electronic brake. This is called a handbrake. Look, you can do this, and fantastic. I didn't do any handbrake turns, but I was tempted. In terms of starting the car, get ready for this. It just sounds fantastic when you start it. Annoyingly, it always asks me to OK some driver safety briefing stuff, and then it also annoyingly, you've got a range of different driver modes in here. If you press this little RS button, you can basically go through some different driver modes, and I've been driving it in a personalised mode, and one of those things in that personalised mode is to basically make the exhaust into race mode. Unfortunately, it defaults back to comfort every time you start the car unless you press an OK button, and that's really, really annoying. In terms of the sat nav and the sound system, that is actually an option. Let me just get the spec list up, because just talk price very briefly. So the on-the-road price for this car, the RS300 Trophy, is £31,835, which I think is incredible value for the car, and we haven't even talked about how good it is to drive yet. There are some expensive options on this car. I've mentioned the paintwork already. The liquid yellow paint is £1,300, but this Bose pack, which is the Bose system and this touchscreen, that's £800 as an option, but the stereo quality is very good, and I actually really quite like this touchscreen. There's a few bits that are quite fiddly, but once you understand how to get from screen to screen, it's relatively easy to navigate your way through it. So all in all, this car is just a smidge over £36,000. I think that's pretty good value. The main console, again, you can change the display there. My favourite is a nice big rev counter with a digital speedo in the middle. It has an upshift sound or kind of little buzzer that goes off when you need to shift up, which is nice. And all in all, a really sporty, racy feel. There are some plastics in here that aren't brilliant. I think these cup holders are a little bit on the small side, and when you move in and out of the seat, sometimes you do this, which is really, really annoying. All in all, the interior is pretty good, to be fair, and very comfortable, but it's about driving this car, so I reckon we head out onto some roads. And certainly I want to talk about these different drive modes in the car, and I want to talk about the gearbox, and I want to talk about this car's feel. It just feels wonderful. I told you it sounds good. Now, when I started doing a bit of research about this car when I knew I was going to get it, I read in a few places that this is basically described, I think even Renault describe it as a track day car for the road. It is their most hardcore and focused version of the Megane, apart from the RS Trophy R, which is the 75 grand one, but let's not even bring that into the conversation. This is kind of normal car for normal people, normal money. So you would think that because it's very, very track focused, when it's just being driven on the road, it's harsh and crashy and not a very nice place to be, and certainly not a nice place to do lots of miles. And honestly, that's just not my experience of the car. As I said, I've had the car, I've done 600 miles in it so far. I plan to do quite a few more before it goes back to Renault. And it's just been a really nice place, and it's a relatively, when you're just not pushing on and you're just driving normally, it's a relatively relaxing place. don't get me wrong, the ride is pretty firm. You can stick it into one of the comfort modes. If I stick it into comfort mode, everything softens up. The display in front of me kind of softens and backs off into a far less racy one. In fact, I don't even think there's a rev counter there now when it's just in comfort mode. But that's just not how I drive cars, especially press cars. I basically get them and I'll stick them in. Now, interestingly, if you stick this into the race mode, it is very sporty. You get a pretty aggressive dash. And the interesting thing is all of the traction control systems get turned off. So, you know, for most people, they're not going to be driving the car around like that on the public road. And I haven't, to be honest. The mode I've basically put it in is I go into the personalization settings, like a lot of cars nowadays, and just tweak the things I want, and I stick it into what they call perso mode. My only criticism of that is every time you get in the car and start it, it asks you, do you want to put it in perso mode? And if you don't say yes, it just drops it back into comfort, and I just think that's annoying. Leave it there. I've chosen to drive it in there. I should not default back to comfort mode. But that said, even in the, and I've sported up things like the exhaust, so it is pretty fruity and barky. It does some nice rumbles and pops on overrun. Now, one of the things I would say is in that kind of racy sports setting, it does drone quite a bit on the motorway. Now, when I start pushing on in a moment, I'll talk more about the gearbox. But on the motorway, the fascinating thing about this car is it's quite short geared. So in 6th gear on the motorway at 70 miles an hour, the engine's doing 2,500 RPM. And honestly, the amount of times I've gone to find another gear and change up is quite comical, because you think, oh, I must be in 4th. And then you realise you're actually in top gear. So the gearbox is very much set up to be short ratio, or you know, a short amount of difference between the ratios to really add to that driving experience. But when you push on, this car comes alive. Probably the first 150 to 200 miles I did in this car was on dual carriageway or motorway in some pretty adverse weather conditions, a lot of heavy rain. And I did think, this is a pretty good car. It's coping with it quite well. So it was starting to get lots of ticks in boxes, and I'm thinking, this is an impressive car. And I was driving to Wales, and I came off of the dual carriageway and onto some tight and twisties. And the first roundabout I came off, where I had a dual carriageway exit and no cars about, I kind of put my foot down in the wet, thinking I'd get a hatful of understeer, and the thing just dug in. And I thought, wow. So when you crack on, the first thing to say is I've got 300 horsepower and 400 Newton meters going through the front wheels from a 1.8 turbocharged petrol engine. It is a lively little thing, this car, and you do have to hang on, but the only way I can describe it is the communication from this car through the steering wheel, through the pedals, through the seat bones in your bum, just feed information into you, and it just makes you feel alive. You have to hang on to the car. Does it have torque steer? Oh yeah. It's not unmanageable, but you really kind of just find yourself, it's darty and sharp and like a scalpel blade in your hand. But when you get to a corner, I get to this corner, drop it down a gear, it doesn't rev match, so you have to heel toe yourself, and then you just bang, turn the front end in, and you've got a rear wheel steer helping you out, and it just, the sharpness of the turning on this car is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable, and the faster you do it, the more sure-footed it feels. Even in the wet, it kind of almost felt like, I'm not going to understeer, I'm going to turn in, you've turned in, you've turned the steering wheel, I'm going to go the way you want me to go. It's incredible, and by the laws of physics, you shouldn't be able to do that with a front-wheel drive car, but this thing is really, really sharp. It just has this playful character. It's a joy to drive, and I haven't got it on a track, and I would love to, because on the public road you can have so much fun, and you don't have to be going that fast to have that much fun. But if you had the shackles of the public road removed, I mean, look at this, look, in, power, power, power. That's just ridiculous. The brakes are really nice. You come into a corner and it's just bang, it's that sharp front end, and it just, oh, it's delicious. I absolutely love this car. Oh man, and then when you just lift off, you might just feel every now and again, you'll just hear a little burble or a crack or a bark. Nothing too garish, nothing too boy racery. That's what I like about this car. It just rewards you in every level. Auditory rewards are just subtle. It's like, yeah, I'll give you a pop round Ferrari corner, and then boom. You don't get a great deal of... See, I'm holding on for dear life. You don't get a great deal of wheel spin. It just has so much traction. Tells you when to change gear. So yes, you find yourself with a big smile on your face when you drive this car, that's for sure. Are there any things that I'm not so keen on? I've mentioned the short top gear, and I know that's because this is a very track focused car, and it tightens up the gear ratios, but on a longer journey I do think that I would probably do my head in after a while. Other little things, this is the key. So now that's all fine. It's nothing to do with the form factor of the key, but once you walk more than about 10 feet away from the car with the key on you, the car locks, which is fine, and it's got keyless entry, so you walk towards it and it unlocks. But if you're in the vicinity of the car doing stuff like, I don't know, washing it, it's constantly locking and unlocking itself. And then you get to the point where you go to unlock the car thinking it's unlocked and it's locked itself, and you end up pulling on the handle for a couple of moments to try and get the car, and that is just annoying. So for me, I'd rather just have a car that you lock and unlock yourself. And these sports seats for £1,500, they look fantastic, but they're not heated, and for me heated seats is a really important function, especially as we're coming into our winter, so I would quite like them heated. But that's it really. I am kind of struggling to find anything else I don't like about the car, because for me this car is all about the visceral driving pleasure it gives you when you get a nice bit of tarmac and you drop it down a cock and you give it some and you hang on. It's just wicked. What are my final impressions of the Renault Megane RS 300 trophy? Well, I'm going to remember my week with this car with very fond memories, because I have had so many smiles. Smiles per mile is the way I would describe this car. It really is hugely impressive. One thing I haven't mentioned, by the way, I've been averaging around about 30 miles to the gallon. I could have probably got a little bit more than that, but this car has a habit of making you drive in a spirited fashion. I just think it's the way that the car communicates with you. What you do find though is when you are driving along and giving it the beans, you do end up kind of holding onto the steering wheel quite tightly. You have to almost remind yourself not to do that. So if you come into this corner here, you can kind of just heel toe down into second and then just bang that front end in. It's just wicked. Yeah, very good. Anyway, I have to say a huge thank you to Renault UK. Another first for me. It's a first Renault from Renault UK on the channel. I really do hope it's not going to be the last, because boy is this car good. But I hope you enjoyed a different manufacturer on the channel. I'd love to know what you think. For me, this car goes toe to toe with equal weaponry with things like Golf R, the M135i I drove last week, the JCW Clubman, the Civic Type R. There's so many of these hot hatches at the 300 horsepower mark now. It's really competitive. But man, don't discount this one, because it's right up there. And I really mean right up there. One of the best gearboxes I've ever driven. And honestly, one of the best cars I've ever driven. But I'm going to enjoy it. I've got it for another few days, but I hope you enjoyed that one. If you have done so, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol for plenty more content to come. And I'll see you on the next film, guys, but you take care. Drive safe.